text, please, on the Twitter. Don't forget hashtag Nux3 with your questions for later. Big round of applause, please, for Leslie.
So I guess I have to stand. Is this working? Okay, oh gosh. I like to move around, so if I can't move around, what will happen is my arms start moving a lot to make up for not being able to roam the stage. I do have to warn you, I get really passionate and excited about this topic, and being Canadian, sometimes I speak really quickly. So I'll be looking at the front row here. If you see me really rambling on, if I could just sort of get you guys to slow me down a little bit. Yes, I do play ice hockey, and that is me up there on the ice. And I do want to talk about experience design being a team sport. Bless you. So anyone can design experiences, but the difficulty really lies in designing great user experiences. And it's the latter that requires a variety of disciplines and skills. And in fact, you know, if you talk to Ben with the work he did on gov.uk, not sure if you're aware, but last year they won an award from the Design Museum, Best Design of the Year. And actually, they did have a truly multidisciplinary team with the government digital services. And that's what I mean when I say experience design is a team sport. And as David actually alluded to in his presentation earlier, I think user experience has really shifted from being one of designing these singular experiences, so designing a mobile phone, an app, or some digital product. And now we're really shifting to be designing holistic experiences with brands. So I believe that actually as practitioners, we really are at a crossroads. And we can either go down to the path on the right, the well-trodden usability, designing singular experiences path, or we can really start looking inwardly as practitioners, looking at our skills and the way we do our work, and start looking at the less traveled path, and that of these joined up customer experiences. And if you think about it, there's been a lot of noise in the news around management consultancies like Accenture. We've got these large multinational brand and marketing companies who are starting to build and acquire these skills and experience design. They're recognizing the true value of what we do to improve customer experiences. So I would argue that actually if we don't start looking at that path on the left, we might no longer be in the game. We might be sitting on the sidelines. So what do I actually know about all of this? Who is this MD standing up talking to you guys? I actually started out back in the 90s designing products and workstations to really optimize the human in that system. And back then I was called an ergonomist, or in North America, a human factors engineer. But as the physical products started to merge more with digital products, so did ergonomics and usability. And very quickly, I started finding I wasn't just designing, for example, bank branches. I was actually looking at the design and the experience a customer has from the bank branch to the ATM and online experiences. Very quickly, I started to recognize, actually, we're not just designing a user experience and solving user problems, we're actually helping to solve business problems. And that's why in 2005, I decided to do an executive MBA to complement my user experience and human-centered design skill sets so that I could help companies start looking at improving their customer experiences across the whole organization. And actually, that's what I'm doing right now at Foolproof, and I'm really lucky. I get to manage the business, but I still get to work on projects. And to help illustrate what I mean, this is a great way to sort of describe what I'm talking about when I say we're designing experiences. I think gone are the days where you can see here, we're not designing a website. We're not just designing a mobile app or a digital product. In fact, we're trying to design successful human outcomes. So we're focused on measuring the level of engagement and satisfaction humans have with any product or brand. And this is what we mean when we talk about experience design. So I think I've been sort of looking around the room. I can vaguely see faces. I think some of you are coming to this game with maybe 6 months under your belt. Some of you might be here with 16, or I think David said he has 20 years under his belt. And so some of the things I'm going to be talking to you about will be brand new, and some things will be old hat. You're already doing it. My aim over the next 30 minutes is to get you to really look at how you work and think about your skill sets and hopefully sort of broaden your perspective, and hopefully you'll walk away with doing one thing differently so you can join me down this path of customer experience. So the first thing, and as David does, I have 5 points I want you to consider. So the first one I want to look at is embracing other disciplines. I think as user experience, we do need to be a little bit more inclusive. So I've already alluded to about the shift from designing singular experiences to this holistic joined-up user experiences. So gone are the days of teams of maybe 1, 2, or 3 people. We now have these bigger, broader teams that we need to be thinking about. So that's simple, right? We're already working in multidisciplinary teams. But the reality is, it isn't always that easy. And thinking about the projects I've worked on, I'm still seeing a lot of infighting happening within organizations. With the departments are fighting over, oh, I own new customer experience, no, I own it. And each of these departments seem to think that only they know how to do it. And there really seems to be this lack of understanding of what other departments can do and what they can offer. Or another way to look at it, I think there's actually a lack of willingness to understand what other departments can do. And so actually I spent some time chatting with Ian Franklin. He's one of the organizers at NUX, and he was sharing to me what he and his psychotherapist friend has been noticing in organizations. Often when you see a lot of infighting and these difficulties, it's because you've got all these people that are really highly skilled and highly knowledgeable, but maybe they have a low status on that project and they don't feel like their voice is being heard. So this is what I'd really encourage us to do, is be more inclusive. And actually, we can't control what other departments do, but we, as UXers, can actually lead by example and start actively listening to others. Which made me remind myself of work I did, gosh, back in 2000, I used to work for a company called Human Systems, where I was an ergonomist. And Air Canada brought me in to basically review some diagrams, some concepts on paper that an architect firm had done to see whether these check-in counters were fit for purpose. And really quickly, I noticed as I was sitting in that room, there's a lot of tension. I thought, God, this is strange, wow. And I was quite young, a bit naive. And I noticed that the architect was thinking to himself, I know what I'm doing. I know how to design these beautiful forms and things that are branded for Air Canada. Who is this young thing telling me about reaches, and what does she know about design? And I'm thinking, I'm an ergonomist. Why doesn't he want to hear about the stuff I know? And then you had the agents and the union reps going, gosh, our workstations are getting smaller and smaller, and it's awkward, and no one's listening to us. Then you had Air Canada, who, their hands were tied because it was the Greater Toronto Airport Authority who was forcing them on having a smaller footprint. So all these people were trying to do the right thing, but they just felt they weren't being heard, or they didn't feel they had control. So I decided, instead of just looking at these schematas of designs and trying to rate which one's best and fit for purpose, I decided to do something quite different. So basically what we did was we took a number of these different designs and we actually mocked up full-scale check-in counters. And you can see these sort of ugly-looking cardboardy things. Those were the full-scale models. And what we did was we got everyone on that team to start interacting with the models. So we had some people acting as the passenger, some people acting as the agents. And we started to play with these, and together as a team, we started to better understand the problem. And all these different disciplines came together. And actually, we came up with the first check-in counters that actually had height-adjustable parts to it. So if you look on the left, that travel agent, she's bending over, it's a tippy chair, trying to get the baggage tag printout to put on the baggage. And meanwhile, as a group, we came up with the one on the right, which was a height-adjustable arm for that printer, so they could work optimally. So that really is an example of actually having a team coming together and designing a much better experience. Now, probably many of you are already working in multidisciplinary teams. Can I have a show of hands of people who feel they're already working in multidisciplinary teams? Great. Okay, there's quite a few of you. Now, I think it's really important that we do work in multidisciplinary teams, but I would actually urge you to go one step further and look beyond the usual suspects. So what do I mean by that? I did a Google search, as we always do when we kick off presentations, and I said, okay, let me see what's out there already on UX teams and experience design teams. And I kept seeing the usual suspects coming up. More often than not, it was UX designer, UX researcher, someone just putting UX in front of whatever their job title was. And that was quite funny. And although all of these roles up here are very important, are definitely needed, I would argue we need to go even further than looking to those usual suspects. So if I use another story, I like to tell stories. So another story, let me share a project that I'm currently working on now. So I'm working with a very large international pharmaceutical company. Fortunately, I can't give their name because I know this is being filmed and I'll get in trouble. But this pharmaceutical company and actually the pharmaceutical industry altogether are really recognizing that medical users aren't really getting the best benefit out of digital. So the industry is highly regulated, and all the regulations and guidelines are actually based on guidelines in the days of print, before digital became sort of mainstream. And they said, guys, can you help us move from being an organization of pushing messages out, traditional marketing messages, and help us turn into an organization that's actually providing an online service? We said, yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to help you out. But because this industry is quite complex, and there's a lot of, like I mentioned, regulations and guidelines, we would have been crazy to think we could do it just with that team. We really needed to understand a little bit more. So we brought in the market researchers, the medical experts, their compliance, and really branched out our team to a much wider team. Now, I won't lie to you, it hasn't been easy. This project's been a real roller coaster ride. One minute everyone's loving it, the next minute everyone wants to resign, and then we love it again, and then we resign. And actually, it was interesting. When it started to get tough, we could have easily said, market researchers, compliance, you guys don't talk to us. We'll bring you in when we need you, just you stay over there. But actually I started thinking about our own experiences. I don't know if you remember when you used to do usability testing. I remember just wanting to get involved at the very beginning, and we were just this sort of glorified tick boxing activity at the end. We couldn't really add true value. So I thought, guys, if we really want to get the true value out of these guys who have such deep subject matter expertise, we've got to bring them in at the very beginning. And actually, it has proven successful. It did take us 3 months to get there, because there was quite a few gaps in understanding. And one of the things we found was it really opened up a lot of different perspectives for us. So the market research team came from the perspective of, you've got to do quantitative research, and it's all about market segments. And so we spent a lot of time working with them and sharing with them the benefits of qualitative research, many iterations, smaller groups, and really what design research was. And pretty soon they started to see the value as well. And now it's great. When we run our quick iterative qualitative research, they're actually adding their expertise and helping back up some of the stuff we're doing with their quant. So we've created a good team. Also looking at the medical experts, when we started working with them, we're like, okay, we're gonna need some content to put in this self-service site. And I said, great, and they opened up, these beautiful big long leaflets. You get when you buy a medical product, paracetamol, whatever, and you've got this massive leaflet of all the product information and all the contraindications and all that good stuff. And they said, here you go, just, put that on the site. We thought, oh my goodness. There's no way we can just take that and put that on the site. So we got medical experts, as David said, we got them involved in what we were doing. We got them involved in the research and all the iterations. And we helped them understand that online, consumers use information in a very different way than they do on print. And they started to better understand that different contexts and different tasks, they would need different chunks of information. So now we're working much more smartly, if that's a word, with the medical experts to provide the right content at the right time. And finally, the other perspective was compliance, and we're still working with them. It's been fun and rather entertaining, because what we're really trying to do is understand how do you interpret compliance that was designed for print? So when we move that digitally, what constitutes a sales or marketing message versus a service? So if it wasn't for bringing all these people into the group, and if it wasn't for broadening the team, the skills, and broadening our own perspectives, we probably would have only had half the picture. And it got me thinking about our own industry and what we do and some of our own biases and prejudices. And I started thinking about, it's really rather ironic. We've spent how many years, 20 years, convincing businesses the value of bringing users and involving users in design, that I think actually we as a business have forgotten about involving the business users as well. And so I went and spent some time going back to Jessie Jane Garrett's The Elements of User Experience. It's a great model, and it's still useful today. But I was looking at it in a bit more detail, and I did say to myself, where are the client's needs in all this? And actually, if we don't think about the business needs as well as the user needs, we could end up designing a very engaging product, but we run the risk of it not being commercially viable or commercially successful. And so this leads nicely to my next conversation, which is about, I think we need to be looking at how we can facilitate better conversations. And this is really about helping us facilitate the right conversations where we're understanding the business needs as well as the user needs. And actually, at Foolproof is what we call the win-win. It's an easy concept to help us understand. So really, you need someone who can represent the users, the right side, what they want, as well as the businesses, what you want. And where those two needs intersect, that's where you're going to have a successful product. And that also provides a vision and a direction for the team on what good is going to look like. And this is what I'd call the captain of our team, going back to the sport analogy. I purposely said a captain, not a coach, because a captain needs to be an active player in the game, an active player in your team, who understands both sides of that diagram, but also has a bigger picture in mind and can help direct the plays. So this is the person who, if you look on the right, this is a person, this captain is someone who actually understands all those elements of UX, you know, the design, interaction design, visual design, and also understands the business and how to tie those two together to define what success looks like and have a focus and a vision. And actually, this is what we call an experience planner. You might have seen other names on it, but depending on the size and the complexity of your project, you may or may not need a formal role. But what I would suggest is you have someone that does play this role or is responsible for these sorts of things. And what I mean by these sorts of things is you want someone who's going to create the experience vision that couples the win-win. You want someone who's going to be capturing the business needs. You want someone who can be facilitating the entire team, so not just designers, even people without design skills, a common understanding of what good looks like, so that experience vision, but also working closely with someone who can represent the design lead to make sure we stay true to experience design. You'll also be working closely with someone, what we call an insights lead, to make sure that voice of the customer is still being heard. And you're also the individual who'll be pulling out the metrics, so you can measure throughout each iteration whether you're hitting success. And actually, this is a role that I'm playing currently in the project I was telling you about. Now, I won't go into details of this slide. We do have a whole toolkit we can talk to you about it, and if you are interested and want to learn more, I suggest you take a look at my colleague Tim Liu. He's doing a lot of work there, or grab me later and I can tell you a bit more about the Experience Planners Toolkit and what we call experience strategy. So let's sum up where we are. So we've embraced other disciplines. We've looked beyond the usual suspects and brought in a wider client team as well as a user team. We're facilitating better conversations because we've got this captain that's got this common vision. Now what do we do? Well, I think it's fair to say that many of us already know and experiencing that the legacy business models cannot keep up with the fast pace of digital. And actually, our client that we're working with really recognizes this, as well as other companies and organizations. And actually, I think it's these siloed departments we end up working with are the ones that are really holding us back from having a real flexible approach and a flexible way of making sure we have that joined-up experience for our customers. And there are two methods that have really taken on a lot of momentum in the business world, and we've also been using and adopting in UX. And it's that of lean and what I call lean and agile UX. And it's been proven really successful for startups. It's a fantastic approach. But my question is, how do you apply that to businesses built on 100 years of policies and procedures and siloed departments? It's not that easy. And I have to admit, the project I've been sharing with you, we started off slightly naive, thinking, oh yeah, we'll just follow our usual, lean, agile UX best practice, it'll be fine. But actually, we were a bit naive because we hadn't realized that despite our client kept saying, yeah, we want experience design. We want a joined-up customer experience. We get it. We want it. But they don't really understand what it is and what does that mean in practice. How do you actually implement it? We also realized, wow, their old ways of working, this issue around compliance, and the fact that this industry has been built on longitudinal studies and these massive clinical trials to try and change that way of working, we didn't realize quite how difficult that would be. But I have to say, because we got them involved early, we've been working with them, after 3 months, we did start to see a change. And I wanted just to share with you some of the things that we learned by trying to implement it. The first thing I think you really need to understand is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all to applying lean and agile UX to big organizations or enterprises. You need to spend the time to really understand the team you're working with, their understanding, their capabilities, their limitations, to adjust how you're working to get the right outcomes from the team. And the other thing we recognized was that although we wanted to do this really quick iterations and just get stuff done, You can't really do that at the beginning because you need to spend time helping people understand so you make better decisions. So what we found was early on in the project, we actually spent a lot more time in what we call the planning phase to really build that understanding and spend a lot of time face to face. So the early collaboration, that point number one, if you look at our design iterations, David was talking about having those iterations, they started out actually quite long because we needed that time to bring them on board and help them understand what we were doing. But now 6 months in, we've actually taken a three to 4 week iteration, and we're now doing 1 week iterations of design and test and validate, which is really amazing and quite a big win for us. And when I say us, I mean the whole team. The other interesting point was the second one about collaboration and co-location. What do you do when your client is across 4 different countries and 3 different time zones? We had North America and the UK. It's not easy. And again, we spent a lot of time up front planning ahead, traveling to the different countries, bringing the team together to build that trust and that relationship and understanding. And since we now have these well-planned iterations that are repeatable, we also know when we need different people on site with us for carrying out the research. And so this has meant we've planned ahead and we have the team working with us. The concept of nimble design and continuous improvement, well, it's hard to be nimble when any research you want to do has to go through 3-week compliance. So the discussion guides and our prototype, all our assets, had to go through 3 weeks compliance. Oh my gosh, this throws out our whole project plan. And again, this was a massive win. The client worked really closely with us. We now took that 3 weeks and we've got it down to 3 days. Again, massive improvements. And the other point I think to consider when we talk about lean, we talk about let's get out of this deliverables business. Let's stop about doing that. And I think the reality is you do need some deliverables in order to communicate with a wider team and to allow the team to communicate to their stakeholders for buy-in. So you do need some deliverables. You can't get rid of them completely. But again, as a team, we've come up and we've got 5 deliverables. That's all we're using. So we've got our experience vision that the whole business has signed up to and everyone understands. So we've got our focus. We have what we call a research findings log. So it's really quickly, at the end of a day of testing, the findings are all there. We have a design tracker to track decisions and actions. We've got our prototype, which is a living prototype that anyone can look at it and see how the designs are progressing. And we have our patterns library. And that's pretty good if you think about a program that's about a year long, and we're now 6 months in. So I have to say, it's been really great. We've really managed to affect change within this team, and we have moved away from these old process-driven relay teams, and we've truly moved to this cross-departmental rugby team. But it's not just with our client. It's the pharmaceutical client, it's foolproof, and it's their third-party suppliers. It has been challenging, but I have to say it has also been extremely rewarding, because we're really starting to see that the work we're doing as a team has made a positive impact on the medical users, but we're also positively impacting the way this client works and hopefully more broadly, pharmaceutical industry. So the final point I want to share with you, anyone who's worked with me will often hear me say, you've got to bring them on your journey. I truly believe that to learn and to grow, you actually need to do. And that's why I'm really lucky. I still work on projects. I still do the work. And it's funny, I find in the world of UX, I'm seeing more and more that there seems to be this reluctance to share our work in progress. And I couldn't quite understand with the team. It's like, guys, come on, why aren't we sharing this? We've got to bring them in. And I thought, oh, God. Someone on the team said, oh, gosh, if we share it with everyone, we've got too many cooks or too many coaches. Too many people reviewing and giving us feedback and direction. Gosh, what a pain. We had another person say, oh, God, if we bring all these people in and share our work in progress, we have to constantly prove ourselves. And the third point someone raised with me who's here in the audience, she said, well, gosh, if we show them our work in progress, I'm worried that they're going to think we don't know what we're talking about, that we don't really understand their business. And I'd actually say that is the role of an experienced planner, the role that I'm taking. It's really about using that work in progress as a tool. So I spend quite a bit of time managing and positioning that work in progress as a tool to open up much better conversations with our clients so we can be making better business decisions. But it also means if you're going to be using a tool like work in progress to open up these conversations, it also means you have to start encouraging feedback and questioning. And that's not an easy thing to do. How many people are comfortable giving and receiving feedback? Yeah, not too many. I strongly urge you, and I myself struggle with it, but I strongly urge you to practice. The more you practice giving and receiving feedback, the easier it becomes. It is hard, and we've had to open up some really tough and uncomfortable conversations as a team, but it's really shown an improvement in the way we work. So we've built much stronger working relationships with our team, but we also now have a sense of collective ownership, which is pretty amazing when you think about the size of this team across 4 countries and across many different disciplines. So I'll say to you, which path will you take? Do you want to stay down the well-trodden path of designing singular experiences, or do you want to come with me on a new path where we're thinking of this more holistic user experience, which means we need to broaden our skill sets and our approach to complement what we're doing, so that we can be competing against some of these big organizations or who are claiming that only they can do customer experience. If you do want to join me on this path, there are things I think we need to be doing differently. So the first one is, as user experience, let's be more inclusive. Let's embrace broader disciplines and skills. So stop trying to prove ourselves to ourselves, and let's start by leading by example and actively listening to the other disciplines. Let's also look beyond the usual suspect. Let's go one step further and start embracing the business users as well as the customers. And this will help us broaden our own perspectives, have a deeper understanding of the problem space to make sure we have the full picture. I also would recommend that we become captains and we facilitate the better conversations so that we look at that win-win, and then we can provide the vision and the direction for the projects we're working on. I also recommend that we become captains of cross-departmental rugby teams. And this means as a captain, you're looking at the skills within your teams, and you're flexing and adjusting your plays so that you can get the best outcomes out of that team. And finally, I do suggest that you bring them on your journey. It is hard work, it is challenging, but it is hugely rewarding when you see the team working more effectively together and you start to see this collective ownership. So I asked at the beginning of the presentation, I hope that I'd be able to introduce you to some different ideas and different perspectives. Reflecting on some of the things I've shared here in these 5 steps, has anyone thought about how they might look at what they do as a practitioner and how they might do anything differently? Has anyone walked away with something different you're going to do on the project you're doing today? Any show of hands? A few? Okay. Well, I'd really like you to urge and think about what you'll do differently to join me on the path of designing connected up customer experiences. Thank you.